Welcome everyone to the ChessBase India Chess Club. My opponent is 1300 rated Mayur Gupta. Knight f3, c5. He goes for the English and I bring out my knight. Pawn to g3, g6, bishop g2 and he castles it out. I play my favorite Botvinnik variation. I really like the pawns here. Yes, it weakens the d5 square, but this is something that I've played with both colors. Knight c3 makes a lot of sense, but he goes for d3. I go knight e7, knight comes out to c3 and now castles. So the idea in such positions is to reroute your knight from e1 to c2 to e3, take advantage of the d5 square. He goes a3, which is also part of the plan. Your plan is also rook b1 and play b4. I push my pawn to d6. Black's plan generally involves playing pawn to h6, bishop e6 and f5. Rook e1 play. Now this is not a good idea because this is the square which you wanted to use for your knight. h6 is played generally so that when the bishop comes here, the knight doesn't hassle it with knight g5. He goes rook b1. I push my pawn to a5 to stop his b4 ideas. So in a way, black has stopped all of white's ideas. The reason why Mayur played rook e1, which he told me after the game, was to play e3 d4. But sort of engineering this pawn break is not going to be easy because I have so much control on the d4 square. And that's the reason why it's important to know some of the plans that are played in the opening. That makes it very easy. The reason, because I know the plans here, it's easier for me to play. Now here I finish my development, bring out my bishop, queen c1 played, being very cheeky, attacking the h6 pawn. I defend it. Now all the time I really wanted to push my pawn to d5, but because the queen is here, it keeps an eye on the c5 pawn, so it's not so easy to play it. And my opponent goes h4. Now the moment he played h4, my eye started to sort of go for the d5 move, because whenever you play on the king side, you must play in, whenever your opponent plays on the flank, you should try and play in the center. But here the problem is that the c5 pawn is very weak, and that's the reason why I didn't go for it. You know, even if you take with the queen, there's knight g5. So there are all these ideas in the position that I was starting to get a bit worried about, which is h5, g5. Are there any sacrifices coming? Will his knight jump here and then threaten forks here if I put my queen on d7? And so trying to work all of this out, my first intention was definitely to play f5 in this position. But then I think what I was a bit worried about is h5, g5 and then bishop takes g5. H takes and knight takes, and my bishop is hanging here. So that's the reason why I didn't play here, but definitely I could have taken g takes h5 here, which is a good idea, and then play my knight here and try to push for h4. So f5 just makes a lot of sense. The other move that I was considering, which is, and I played, is queen d7. With this move, what I'm trying to do is attack here, also defending my bishop so that f5 becomes a possibility. And also my opponent right now cannot go knight d5 because I can simply take and take the extra pawn here. But clearly I have to be aware of some knight g5 checks and the bishop controlling the d5 square. Black is doing very well in this position, and white has to be very creative in what way he should continue. And Mayur, who is now down to 2 minutes 38 seconds, goes for knight h2. This is a very interesting way he played. I didn't like this move at all during the game, but the engines are like, this is a good move. Okay, bishop h3 would have been a nice move, trying to trade off these bishops here. But I was ready to rock and roll. I went f5. I want to attack his king side, and now f4 is on the cards. With h4, the white king does look a bit weak. And now he jumps in with the knight. I know that there is a fork here, aware of it. So bishop takes d5, pawn takes, and knight d4 would have been an excellent decision. But generally you don't want to part away with your bishop, which is a very strong piece. So I went rook b8, and now my opponent can actually create the play he was looking for, b4. Fantastic play, and white has kind of equalized the position. In fact, the engines think that it's even better for him slightly. But you know, I felt somehow that it's not the case, because after take on b4, cb4, I felt that the queen is a little bit misplaced here on c1, and so I can actually attack on the king side. He took, and now this is the point where I played f4, and I was quite proud of this move, because now I've sacrificed a pawn to open up the bishop, use my knight, use my rook to attack, and it does feel like a very logical way to play. However, chess is not only about logic, it also involves concrete calculation, and here concretely white is doing okay. And the way in which is, first he must take here, extra pawn, he takes it, good move, and I quickly go bishop h3, and now he must take on c6. The reason for this is, if I take with the pawn, which is what I want, then he trades one pair of rooks, and my rook is no longer active here. And if I take with the knight back here, then he has a very stable square on e4, which I can no longer push it away with d5. So with these possibilities, I should have gone for, but he should have gone for knight c6, but he goes bishop f3, and this allows me to start moving my knight into the position. I was very confident that here there should be something. In fact, I was also looking at options like taking here, and then is there some kind of a sacrifice with my bishop moving in. You know, it was feeling very attractive, this position. Knight comes into d4, attacking the bishop on f3, and now he must move the bishop away, because if I am able to take this bishop, then his king becomes very weak. My queen starts to enter in here. He goes king h1. But now this allows me to take on f3, and if he takes back with the knight, then I can go in with my queen, this is what I imagine here, and try to mate him. If rook g1, queen h5, the queen is very well placed there. So knight f3 is what I wanted to play. Also, I'm trying to be very particular. I saw at the time on the clock I had 1 minute 30 seconds, so that's 1 extra minute here, and I think this is the position where you want to think carefully before making your move, because there could be a tactic. I take on f3, he takes with the pawn, trying to control this, but look at his pawn structure. Although he's a pawn up, his position is in disarray. h5 is important, at least to make some of my pawns doubled. But instead he goes rook g1, but now I'm just able to equalize the material with knight h4, and also his pawn structure is bad. Rook to g3, and I would like to kick the rook away with knight f5, but my bishop is hanging, so a good idea is to bring the bishop back to e6. That would be a strong way to play. And yes, I do that. I bring my bishop back. Black is clearly better, and very close to winning here. He has 16 seconds left. Not so easy to play his moves. He goes knight to d5, and now a good way to play is to just take on d5. This knight is very strong, and you can further spoil his structure. I went knight f5, rook g2, and yeah, maybe take here. Pawn takes, rook c8, bring the rook here, attack the d5 pawn. I went knight d4, but now my opponent made some logical moves. He went bishop e3, bishop takes d5, pawn takes, and maybe you can already start thinking about pushing your pawn, but I went rook c8, queen g1, knight e2 is very powerful because it attacks the queen and wins this pawn. But by now he has only 1 second left. I have 12, queen f7, and he loses on time there. So a very instructive positional game in the end became slightly messy.